All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to take this opportunity to talk about this new program. Um, my name is Dave Hernandez. I'm VP of Education for IPC. I'm going to be introducing a little bit of the background of the program, a little bit of why we built it and how we built it, and then Carlos will actually show everyone a live demo of our of one of our betas. It's never a great idea to do a live demo, as many of you probably know from product demonstrations, but we're going to go ahead and try that anyway because we felt like it would give everyone the most realistic experience possible. So before I start talking about this new program, I kind of want to just take a moment and set the stage for everyone. Uh, so other than standards, I think IPC is probably best well known for our certification programs. And this is really a pillar of what we do at IPC. And in my opinion, one of the most important things that we can offer the industry and continue to offer the industry is our certification programs. Currently, we have five families of certification programs. The CIS is the specialist, CIT is the instructor, CSE is what we call a standards expert. We have the CID family, which are for PCB designers, and the CEPM, which is for program managers. The first three of those what we call standards-based certification. So those certifications are really designed around our standards, how to utilize the standards, how to understand the standards, and we provide training and certification services globally for this. Um, the programs currently are offered in over 200 different countries, and some of our programs are translated into as much as 21 different languages. These programs are fairly ubiquitous in the education. I'm sorry, in the electronics manufacturing space. You know, in 2019, we had 108,000 certified. We certified 108,000 individuals globally. And last year we certified just about 95,000. So even at during a pandemic year, you can see that these programs are fairly widely utilized. Um, One quick side note that I wanted to mention because it was brought up earlier, for those, we talked about the new revision of 620 being released last year. The new revision of the 620 certification has also been released. It's currently available in 8 different languages. And this was a complete rebuild, not just a revamp. So normally when we do a revision shift, we update the material, we update the test to the new revision. In this case, we took the time to actually do a rebuild of both the training program and the tests. So our training committees did a wonderful job of putting together a whole new training around the 620 program. We included a bunch of new collateral in there as part of it, really taking the feedback that we heard from the industry and putting in the effort to put in a whole new program. And then we also did the same thing with the exam. So those are currently available out there today. So certification has really been the heart of our education programs for the last several decades, and it will continue to be the heart of it. But one of the things that we noticed when we reached out to the membership was that there were gaps in that framework, right? So there were things that certification itself wasn't necessarily solving for our member organizations. I'll talk about a few of them that we identified in there. First was that, and we heard this quite often from our members, that the certification programs didn't necessarily provide basic skill training on how to do a job, right? And so if you look at two of the largest challenges that our membership has identified, which is the obtaining of new talent into the industry and the retaining of talent in there, the certification programs were critical in the retaining part, right? Because they helped people identify that they had a certain level of knowledge, but it didn't really necessarily help obtain new talent. Um, Oftentimes our certification programs are being used by people who have very little knowledge of electronics and manufacturing because it's something that they need to have. And so that kind of led us into the second problem, which was that there was a lack of options for these organizations. You know, certification by its nature is a standardizing process. It's a process that really says that someone that is at this level of competency is recognized by the assessment as having that level of competency, regardless of what particular job they may be doing. So, it's kind of funny to think about, but there can be situations where you have someone who's a brand new operator sitting in the same classroom as someone who's an engineer and taking the same CIS program. Um, Beyond that, there was also so certification, I think, does an exceptional job, and really because it's so industry driven, um, that it creates a baseline of knowledge when it comes to the standard, right? We have various levels, as we mentioned in there, the CIS, the CIT, the CSE, and each one has a varying level of degree of knowledge related to the actual standard. And certification really sets those baselines of that knowledge. But there was really nothing out there that was setting a baseline of knowledge when it came to job based knowledge, right? So, how to perform a particular job. And then finally, certification, because it is a standard force and because it's industry driven and because it is something that comes from the standards, is not necessarily future facing. Right. Oftentimes, it's looking at it's very focused on the now, how things are done now. Since our standards are standardizations, and certification seeks to standardize things just like that, we needed something that could also be a little bit forward facing when there was opportunities to do training that were forward facing. So what we did was we met with a series of organizations. The final number of organizations that we met with in that first round was in the mid 50s, and each one of these organizations provided us feedback on how to address the problem. And what we kind of settled on was the idea that we needed to develop a training program that was focused around job-based knowledge and skill. And these programs would really be focused on addressing industry issues. So it was imperative to the success of the programs that they were driven by the industry, and that not only were they driven by the industry, but that they were actually developed, as Dave mentioned, in part by the industry themselves. Um, and one of the things we kind of decided early on with these groups of companies that we were meeting with was that we really wanted this to become outcome focused, right? We really wanted to look at how we trained people, how we could provide better value to our industry. And so by setting the goal that we wanted to make sure that whatever training we built here was engaging, efficient, and effective, we kind of set it out. We set it up so that we were looking at the outcomes of this training. um, when we talk about engaging, efficient, and effective training, really what we're talking about is we're talking about training that keeps the students interested in the learning. If possible, we wanted to find techniques and strategies and technologies that can help reduce learning time and thereby cost to the organization, because they have their employees spending less time in training, but not sacrifice learner retention. We actually wanted to increase learner retention with less time in the classroom. Um, and then finally, one of the things that the industry identified as important, and obviously we at IPC could not think of anything more important than this, we wanted to integrate this into the existing certification framework, right? We recognize that not every individual in the world is ready for certification, nor is every individual in the world necessarily a candidate for certification because of their job. And so we wanted to provide resources not only for those that sought certification, but also for those who maybe were not seeking certification because it was never kind of in their plan, as a stepping stone to maybe also obtaining that certification in the future. So our hope is that this is also helping drive that certification framework and making it so that certification is not something that is unattainable to them, but rather something that they can work towards. Maybe they were never thinking about it to begin with, but something that they can work towards in their careers. In order to really make this happen, we needed to have deep industry participation. Uh, Dave mentioned early in his first presentation how WHMA members participated in the development of this program. I'm going to amend that comment a little bit. This program would not exist today were it not. I'm sorry about that. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, you broke out. You broke away there for a minute, but I can hear you now.
You
Apologies.
you were you were talking about the amending Dave's comment.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My internet froze up there for a second. I wanted to amend Dave's comment a little bit there for a moment. This program wouldn't exist today were it not for the WHMA membership. They have been extraordinary in helping us develop this program. When we first identified a need for this program, which I'll talk about a little bit more how we came to that. Um, the we reached out to the WAMA board and to the WAMA membership, and the outpouring of support and help has really been extraordinary. Um, I want to take a moment to talk about how that partnership works. So we initially spoke to about 40 organizations that were involved in wire harness manufacturing and in support of wire harness. And they helped us identify the knowledge and skills areas that were needed for new operators, right? And for younger operators, for newer operators. And so we had all sorts of different ways in which we collected this, but mostly it was done through interviews. Some of these interviews were fairly lengthy, and we got into real detail into exact skills and knowledge areas that were needed by these operators. Then we spoke to those organizations, and we offered any of those that wish to continue to volunteer the ability to help work with us in structuring the program. And so we worked with this group of subject matter experts to really structure a program and then validate that out in the industry. Once we had an outline of what the program looked like, what was going to be trained, how we were going to do it, we went back to those organizations that helped us and offered them the opportunity to review everything and give us any additional feedback they had. Then we formed what we call an A team. The A team are really the organizations that have gone above and beyond, because not only have they helped us frame the program and identify what needs to be taught, but they actually helped build it. And so the A team members would volunteer for different modules or different sections, and they would help us build the content. They would review stuff that our developers did. They would meet with our developers to kind of talk about to what depth we should cover a topic or how we should cover a topic. They would often volunteer videos and animations and images that we needed in there. And so it was really a collaborative partnership with the different organizations that helped do that. Every time a section of the training was completed, we would send it out to the subject matter experts so that they themselves could review it. And then finally, once all of those have been reviewed, and this is the step that we're in now, we went back to many of those organizations that helped us and said, look, would you be interested in beta testing this, not just with your instructors, but with operators in your organization and providing us feedback? This beta process is really important because it helps kind of work out all the kinks in the armor, but also it's really it's trial by fire, because you're putting this in front of real operators, and we kind of ask the organizations to do it. Don't give them too much coaching. We want to see how they are able to utilize the program, what they gain from it, and all that. So and I'll talk a little bit more about the beta in a moment. But one of the things that we kept hearing from organizations as we were building both the assembly operator program and now the wire harness program was that they wanted flexibility in implementation. Right? Not every organization was going to be able to utilize the program in the same way. So these programs are delivered in two different modalities. We have an asynchronous program. So this is what you would imagine to be a traditional e-learning course, right? There is a virtual instructor. The students go through the material on their own on a computer or any really internet connected device with a browser, and they are able to complete all the programs, the activities, the interactives, the assessments, everything online at their own pace. There's also an instructor-led version of this program where we provide the instructor inside of an organization all the content that they need to teach the program. And then they deliver the program in a classroom setting, and then students utilize the online activities, the assessments and things like that to do their individual work. There's also some organizations that have started to adopt a hybrid approach, and we're seeing this in the assembly operator program. And the hybrid approach, if in education circles, it's something that's known as a flipped classroom model. This is when teachers will assign the students to go through a section of the learning on their own. They go through it on their own, and then the instructor will come back and actually teach the material to everyone together. Right. So it's kind of like a review of the material from the instructor after the students have gone through it on their own. These programs are divided into two different sections, right? And we'll go a little bit more into this when I actually show you the program. There are what we call the required modules. These are the modules of content. This is the content that the industry has identified that every operator needs to know. So every wire harness operator needs to know this set of information. And then we have the optional modules, which are really focused around different areas of knowledge that are focused on different jobs that someone may do on the floor. The whole idea here is that there's different ways of implementing the program. We have seen this again in the assembly operator program has been out since August, so we've had quite a bit of visibility into how organizations use it. There are some organizations that say we want our operators to be generalists, so they have them go through the required modules and all the optional modules. And there's some that they want them to be specialists, so they go through the general knowledge and then only go through specific modules that are focused around the jobs that they're going to be doing. So the programs, the way that we've designed them, is that we're utilizing what's known as a micro learning approach. So each module will be fairly short in the grand scheme of things. So, modules, I think the longest module we have would be a module that would maybe take about 2 hours to complete. But even that module that's 2 hours is broken up into subsections. And the whole idea with the subsections is that we want to make it easy for organizations to implement it however they see fit internally. So if they want to have students do this all at once, like learning from 8 to 5, they can do it that way. If they want students learning in little half-hour blocks throughout several weeks, they can do it that way as well. But it's subdivided into content that makes it easy for the user to absorb the knowledge. We utilize all sorts of different things to keep students engaged, videos, interactives, animations, whatever we felt was the best way with our subject matter experts to explain a concept. That's what we utilized in developing the program. We also use professional voice actors for the programs. Instead of utilizing like a robotic voice or having students read all the content, we created virtual instructors, and each module has a different virtual instructor that goes through this with them that actually teaches all the content for them. One of the things that, and we'll talk about this more in the next slide as well, but one of the things that we've also implemented is that each module, and Carlos will show you this, has a pre and post assessment. The pre and post assessments are really meant to do two different things. In the pre-assessment, we're helping the individual understand how much knowledge they currently have on a particular topic, right? And we'll talk about why that's important in a moment. In the post assessments and in the assessments that we build in throughout the activities, throughout the program and throughout each module, it's meant to measure how much an individual knows and then retrain them when necessary. You can actually see this on the two pictures on the right. On the top picture, I purposely, this is a little activity, right? And we have these little activities come up every few minutes where they had just talked about the different types of soldered terminals. And then there's an activity where there was 4 pictures of soldered terminals, and you had to kind of pick from a list and drag them over and name each one, right? And I purposely, or maybe I didn't do it on purpose, got it wrong, right? And it lets me know, hey, you didn't do this correctly. However, you can either try again right now, or there's a review button. And if you click on the review button, what it does is right there in the quiz, it stops the quiz and opens up the area that goes over all of this information in the module again. And again, the idea here is that the assessments are not necessarily there to say you're a failure as a student, but rather to say, hey, you didn't retain this when we went through it the first time. So let's go over it again to make sure you truly understand this before we move on. Each of these programs also has optional hands-on activities. And the way that we do these hands-on activities is we leave it up to each individual organization to determine what makes most sense for them. each each of these programs has modules, activities that reinforce what you learn in that module. So you can either do it at the end of that particular module, you can kind of take aside and do that activity with the students, or some organizations are kind of grouping them together so that they do a couple days in the classroom going through the programs and then they spend a half a day on the floor. Either way, the idea of the hands-on activities is we really want to reinforce what they're learning in the classroom on the floor, right? We want them to gain that real life experience. And some of the feedback we've received from our assembly operator program has been very encouraging on this. The idea that the students are able to connect what they're seeing on the floor to what they learned in the classroom. The recognition that they understand what happens next or how this works because of something they saw in the classroom when they're out there on the floor. And finally, these programs obviously are, since they're online programs, are available 24/7. They're available globally. I won't say that every device that has internet connection in a browser will work, but I've not really run into a lot of devices that don't work with it. The philosophy that we utilize when we're developing these programs is what's known as user-centric learning. User-centric learning theory really is about focusing on each individual student versus the whole group, right? And what we're able to do with these programs is we're able to utilize technology and some of the approaches that we use in our educational development to really ensure that students have the ability to progress through a program at their individualized pace. Right. So it says that students that don't know material don't advance to the next section until they have an understanding of that material and really show proficiency in that. At the same time, like we talked about with the pre-assessments, students that know a particular topic area well can go through the topic very quickly so as not to spend a lot of time on that topic, but instead focus on areas that they have the biggest weakness. Um, the program, and because we're using so much technology in the development and running these programs, is really designed to make learning active versus a passive process, right? Many of our certification trainers go out of their way to make their classrooms active, right? They want the students engaged in what they're learning in certification. And so they'll go out of their way and bring in things to take the students out of the classroom. They're always kind of doing things that keep students engaged instead of just kind of sitting there like zombies. So we wanted to replicate what some of our great trainers do in the classroom online. We wanted to utilize as much interactivity with the student to keep them engaged and active and really in control of their learning. Finally, there's a very important role for instructors, even with user-centric learning. What user-centric learning really does for instructors, and this is really when you're looking at like internal instructors at an organization, it gives them the opportunity to provide students more individualized support when they have need and don't understand a particular section, and they have the ability to really teach organizational specific content. Since the program is kind of covering the general content, they're able to provide guidance and context for what they're learning in the real world. So we just learned about this topic here, in our digital classroom. Now let's go out into the real world and see how this works on our factory floor. So the instructors, if you have instructors available inside of your organization, still play a very vital role with something like this in adding to the program and adding to the individualized learning. So what have we already developed for workforce development training programs, and what is coming out next? Well, I talked a little bit about the electronics assembly for operators and wire harness for operators programs. The electronics assembly for operators program was launched late last year. The wire harness for operator program is going to be launched imminently. We also have 3 standards-based programs that are add-ons to these programs, one on 610, one on 001, and one on 620. These are not certification programs that I'm talking about here, right? These are add-on modules that you have an option of using that are meant to introduce the standard to a student. So, for example, we have several organizations who are going to be using both the workforce development training and certification, and this is a nice little bridge for them, right? This introduces the standard to them, explains to them what a standard is, how the standard is used, and kind of introduces to them at a very high level. These are very short programs. These are a few hours. These are not certification. If you're going into these programs expecting the kind of quality education you get in our certification programs, you're going to be disappointed, because this is really meant as a bridge, like I said. And then we have the Soldering Fundamentals program. This is a program that is really focused on teaching the basic skill of soldering. So it assumes little to no soldering skill of the individual and really focuses on building up their skills in soldering. This program is not offered as as synchronous or an online version. It's really only offered as a classroom version. There's some things we can teach you about soldering online, but you can't teach someone how to solder on a computer. So it's really meant to be taught in the classroom in an organization, and we provide all the resources. And obviously, there's things that we could teach them virtually that we do. That program is really the only program that we have here that is only available in the classroom version. We also have a fairly extensive design curriculum, PCB design curriculum. These are mostly what we call live online training programs. They're offered several times a year. These are akin to like college courses, where you have a live instructor that is lecturing. These programs typically have lectures twice a week. And then in between each week, the students are completing a project. So it's what we call project-based curriculum. They're implementing what they know or what they learn that particular week into a real life project that is as close to simulating what they would see in the work site as possible. We also have a series of programs that we started working on with the industry around. There will be several of these programs, so let me not say three of them, but in three areas: in PCB assembly and wire harness inspection and tester programs. So you'll start seeing some of these programs coming out late this year and throughout next year. So we've started working on those programs, and those will be kind of the next area that we kind of build out this education for. As you see in the note on the bottom, both the assembly operator and the wire harness operator programs will obviously be available in English, but we're also using this as a test case. We're also going to be releasing both of them in Spanish. And when I say releasing the programs in Spanish, it means that this is a fully Spanish language course. So all the audio is in Spanish, all the text on the screen is on Spanish, all the activities are in Spanish. We've rebuilt the programs in another language to really see whether this is something that is viable in the future for us. Very briefly, I wanted to kind of share the assembly operator for the electronics assembly for operators program. The module titles on the left are the mandatory modules, and these are kind of covering all the general knowledge that an operator would need to know. And then on the right are the optional modules, and each one of these is kind of built around specific areas of jobs that someone who is an assembly operator may do. And again, organizations have the flexibility to either create generalists or specialists based upon how they want to implement it. The mandatory modules take about 16 to 20 hours to complete, depending on the student. And then if you were to do all of the optional modules on the right, it would take an additional 16 to 20 hours. So what we've been seeing fairly consistently with this program is that if you want to do all the modules, depending on the student, it would take somewhere between 4 to 5 days. When we built the program, obviously you can notice modules 13, 14, and 15. There was a lot of content that was identified that was pertinent to individuals who worked with wire harnesses. We asked the question of many of the organizations that we worked with as to whether this was sufficient for wire harness operators that worked exclusively with wire harnesses, and we were laughed out of the room. So we kind of said, well, if this is not appropriate, how do we build a program for wire harness operators? And that's where we kind of reached out to WHMA and started talking to the membership and started getting an idea of how people trained currently, what they would like to see, what they needed, things like that. And so then we built the wire harness operator program. This is a slightly shorter program than the assembly operator program. Again, the 7 modules on the left are the mandatory modules, and these can be completed. This may change because obviously we're in beta right now, so we're still learning. But we suspect that these can be completed in roughly 12 to 16 hours, so a day and a half to 2 days. And then all the optional modules, if you were to do them all again, would be an additional day and a half to 2 days of training or thereabouts. Carlos will talk a little bit. I think we're going to go through one of the modules a little bit with you now in a few minutes. But I just wanted to kind of give everyone an overview of how the program was laid out and some of the high level topic areas. Now, each one of these topic areas is broken out into several subsections that we cover in each module. And Carlos will show you a little bit about that in a moment. So let me just give you a very quick update on the beta testing before I turn this over to Carlos. We began beta testing at the end of January. So we're only about 2 weeks into the beta, a little bit more than 2 weeks into the beta. And we figure that this is going to run until about sometime in the beginning of March is what I'm going to guess is a realistic timeline. We currently have 11 organizations that are participating in the beta. And when we talk about participating in the beta, what I mean is they're going through all the sections of the training with both students and kind of internal subject matter experts, supervisors, instructors, people like that. And at the end of each module, they're giving us a bunch of feedback. Hey, and it can range. On the right hand side here, I have some of the feedback that we've received that's positive, but not every piece of feedback we receive is positive. Sometimes we get important feedback such as hey, I tried to do this and this thing didn't work, or I went through this section and I don't quite understand it. I feel as though I understood some of it, but there's a lot of it that's still kind of unclear to me. You probably need to go more into this. And so it's a kind of a combination of feedback that we receive that helps us make the best program possible for when we decide to launch the program. And we won't launch the program until it's at a place where we feel like it's as close to finished as possible. As Dave mentioned, everyone who's a WHMA member who attends this presentation today will be able to have a free registration into the course. We decided that instead of offering it to everyone today in the beta state, we would wait until it launched because we wanted to make sure you had the best experience possible. Beta testing does get you early access, but you are expected to run into some challenges, to some problems. So we will be reaching out to everyone who's here, who's a WHMA member, and asking you to provide us the name and email address of each individual or the individual that you would like to sign up for the program so that you can kind of get that going. So now we're going to turn it over to Carlos for to talk about the program a little bit. But before that, I'm going to go through the questions real quick and kind of go through this last thing. This is just a view of what the certificate looks like when you complete. I wanted to mention this because it's a question that we get quite often. Again, this is a training program. This is not a certification program. This program is meant to teach people things, right? So when you have assessments in a training program, we're not assessing that you're coming into this with the knowledge, or we're not assessing that you're like a master of something. We're assessing whether you understand what it is that we have taught in the program, right? Whether you have walked out of there with that level of knowledge. So I just want to kind of mention that very briefly because this is still a relatively new product line for the industry, and I want to make sure that everyone's clear about that. So before I turn this over to Carlos for a demo, I have some questions here. So Chris asks, is the instructor-led program to be delivered by a CIT? Great question, Chris. I am sorry, I completely forgot to mention that. Yes. So one of the requirements in order for an individual to lead the instructor-led program is that they're a CIT. And the reason that we have that set up that way was that we want to make sure that anyone who's an instructor for the program has a level of competency and is able to teach the program effectively before we give them access to the program to teach that. Let me see if there's any other questions here that are coming in.
Dave, there's one that says, will 620 CITs need to be retrained to this new training program?
No, you will not need to be retrained for this. We will provide you with access to the program, right? So that you have the ability to go through it all. We also have an instructor guide to kind of help you. What we do ask all the CITs to do is to review the program before they teach it, just to make sure that they familiarize themselves with it. If they have any questions, they could always reach out to us, things like that. So, but you're not going to, we wanted to make this as easy as possible for the industry. We didn't want to add any more hurdles like having them go retrain for a new program or anything like that. Somebody asked if the free registration is for the CIS level or the CIT level. Again, this is not for the certification. This is for the wire harness operator training program that we're offering the free registration. So I think that's about it for now. We have some feedback there that I will review with the team. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Carlos, who's going to try the Herculean effort of offering a live demo to everyone. So Carlos, I stopped sharing, so you should be good to go.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I am going to share my sound. If it is too loud, please let me know. We'd like to share the sound so that you can get a sense of how it works with the narration. Let me start here, though, with the dashboard. This is what the learning management system, the Edge learning management system looks like. Users will get an email providing simple instructions on how to access their course, and they will be directed to a page like this. And as you see here, all of the modules are listed in order in tabs. You can start here, and this information here, it's pretty important information with the start here. It provides a syllabus that David just mentioned in the instructor guide for instructors. So that's important information there. And it also allows you to see what it's like in case you have any issues with browsers, what if it, this just tells you if you've completed or haven't completed a module, and I'll show you what that looks like. But the important part here really is the syllabus and some information here for those of you who are new, or those of your operators or other individuals who are taking this course who are new to online courses, online programs. There's just some tips on how to manage your time and go through an online course, right? And so if we go down here to module 1, there's also an introduction video, and this one is kind of important for those of you who are not very familiar with working through a learning management system or on a learning management system, and are doing this relatively for the first time. And it just tells you what is in the course and how to navigate the course. So it's kind of 5, 6, 7 minutes. I believe we stopped around 7 minutes, and it really gives you a good overview of what's there and how to use it. So I would certainly direct those of your people who are new to online learning to this little video, because sometimes that's one of the things that turn people off to this. But it's very simple to use, even intuitively. So here are all the modules. You can go modules in sequence, right? And each module has a pre-quiz and a post-quiz, right? The pre-quiz, as David was mentioning, helps a person to assess what they already know. It's also really, you can think of it as a way of priming the student, of priming yourself to learn what's in the main content area, right? The main sections of the module. And the reasoning behind that is that these quiz questions are very simple. And for those of us who have some sense of what might be in the module, it'll remind us, oh, we're going to talk about this. I remember that in this context. And now it's in the forefront of their mind, right? They're ready when they see the topic addressed in the module to connect that new information, or to remember that new information and connect it with what they've just remembered in the pre-quiz. It's there, right? They brought out the shelf where these things lives. and they're going to put these new things onto that shelf, and it's in the forefront of the brain, in the short-term memory, ready for you to add it there. For those students who don't know anything about this, right, and they're going to miss one or more of these questions, and that's okay. What it does is create a mild kind of discomfort, psychological discomfort that we all feel when we miss something. And it primes us to fill that gap in knowledge that you just recognized by doing this little post quiz. So when you see the topic that you missed in this pre quiz addressed in the module, you're like, oh, that's what it is. And you're much more likely to remember it because you missed it the first time. So these just little psychological um, research-based methods of helping people really get off to the right start and retain the information. So you'll see here, it's pretty basic, right? And I'll give you a chance, and I'll go through these pretty quickly. If anyone on the call has a question or would like me to slow down, just let Mike there know, and he'll let me know through the comments. So I'm just gonna cruise through this here. Right, I'm gonna submit. And I'm just kind of guessing here, guys. Right, distractions, that's what they're for, right? Right, and we'll go all of the above, right? Right, and each of these allow you to review the questions. Remember, this is about learning. So it says, oh, I got all of them wrong, right? I can go and review. And there it is, right? As opposed to a certification where you don't see any of the answers anywhere because it's meant to really verify what you already know. This type of program, a training program, is meant to simply make sure that you do know it. And one of the main parts of that is seeing what you get wrong so that you can go back and look at it again, make sure you know it, right? So that's the pre-quiz. I'm going to go out of there. I'm going to go back, right? And then we'll go into our main content, right? We'll do the main content. And you know what? I think I'm going to jump. I'll show you a more, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to show you a more advanced module. That's safety. Let's jump into crimp terminations, right? This is a pretty popular one, and there's a pre-quiz for that. Let's jump into the main content there.
Hi, I'm Carlos, and like you, I'm a wire harness assembly operator. In previous modules, we covered the tools, materials, and processes required to review the documentation for your assembly task, verify that you have the right materials for the job, and prepare your wires. The next step in the process is attaching terminals and contacts, and in this module, we're going to explore one of two methods for wire termination. A wire termination.
All right, I'd like to stop there for 1 second. Does everyone hear? Can everyone hear? Is the share sound functioning?
Yeah, we can hear it, Carlos.
All right,
Yep.
perfect.
It was
right.
good. I sent you a quick note, but you didn't
Okay.
catch it. So
Okay, great. I saw it flash, but I didn't want to get
Okay.
distracted. Thank you, Mike. I'm going to show a few slides, and then I'm going to jump about a little bit to give you a sense of the module as a whole and as a representative example of all the other modules, right? So if you have any questions, though, please let us know. Mike, please just let me know.
Is the work performed to the end of a wire that allows it to connect to a device, such as a connector, switch, or terminal. In electronics assembly, wires can be terminated by crimping or by soldering. In this module, first, we'll explain the differences between various crimping methods. Then we'll practice with identifying acceptable and defect conditions for open barrel, closed barrel, and machine crimp terminations. Let's get started. First, click the tabs on the right to explore this module's learning objectives, vocabulary, and module map. When you're ready, click Next to advance to the module menu and select a section to begin.
So here you can look at the objectives one more time, and you can refer back to them at any time to make sure that what you're learning actually addresses each of these, which have been identified by the SMEs in industry as what they feel a wire harness operator really needs to know to do this particular task, right? You have the vocabulary. At any time, if they see a word or a term, phrase in the module, they can always come back here and click it to make sure they understand what it is that they're talking about, because it might be introduced and explained and then referred to in a later place, and they can always come back and check it out. A very important part of that. Okay, let's go back out of there. And then the module map. And this can be downloaded as a PDF, and it gives you an overview. And this is good for instructors as well, in conjunction with the instructor guide, to show what is encompassed and what we mean when we say closed barrel. Okay, we're going to talk about these topics, right? And we're going to talk about these topics when it comes to machine contacts. Now, before I move on to the sections, I'd like you to take a look at the left-hand corner over here, this hamburger menu. All the students have the option to move through this in order, right? But if they want to go back to something, say they've gone down here to a section in open barrel, and there's a question in their mind, a reference maybe to something that they saw in the introduction, maybe about crimping, they have the ability to open this menu and jump back to it, check it out, and then come back to where they were. So this gives that flexibility. The instructor likewise can do the same thing if they so choose to connect ideas between different sections. And you can see the sections that I'm about to show you in the next slide reflected right here. Introduction is one, open barrel is the other, closed barrel is the second, machine contacts is the third, right? And those are, close that one, introduction, open barrel, closed barrel, machine contacts. Those are the 4 sections, right, that you'll be going through. Let me close that menu, and we'll go on to the next module. Next slide, excuse me. And here we just choose, right? You'll see here that there's a tab here for hands-on exercises. The instructor, or the student even, can click on this and access the materials and steps for a practice activity designed to reinforce one or more areas covered in this module: open barrel, closed barrel, machine contacts. And we'll see that in a little bit. And of course, here it allows you to exit at any time. If you've done one module and your time's up, for whatever reason, that's the time allotted, you're only going to cover this one section of the module, you can just jump back here to the main page and exit, and you're out, right? And when you come back out, this will already be, there'll be a check mark here that says, hey, you've already done this, so start over here, right? And we won't kind of complete all of that to see the check, but just realize that the navigation is very intuitive and lets you know what you've completed and what you still need to complete. Right? It makes it very easy for a person to do that. So we can just jump here. We'll jump ahead to closed barrel, right? And it tells you here, closed barrel terminals are usually insulated. It gives you a definition. It allows you to start here and you begin.
Closed barrel terminals are another option for use in crimped terminations. Closed barrel terminals are less complex than open barrel terminals. In this section, we will explore the different parts of a closed barrel terminal, as well as defects that can occur when attaching wires.
All right. Have a little close-up view.
Closed barrel terminals are usually insulated. They have an O-shaped or closed area where the wire is inserted. Point to the markers to explore the anatomy of the open barrel crimp. Please note that the characteristics of the closed barrel crimp elements are the same as those in open barrel crimps.
I'm doing this quickly for the benefit of your
In
time.
closed barrel terminations, the crimp should be positioned properly to secure the conductor and support the insulation. A bell mouth should be evident and the wire strands should be visible beyond the conductor crimp. As with the open barrel crimps, closed barrel crimps also have a range of acceptable insulation clearance. The minimum insulation clearance is flush to the end of the contact barrel. The maximum insulation clearance is based on the application, but in general, it is not greater than 1 wire diameter. Move the slider to review the acceptable and defect conditions of the insulation clearance. An acceptable insulation support crimp can be irregular.
So I'll pause there, and you're just to get an idea, we'll jump to a knowledge check and a practice. So here you get a little knowledge check. You can click. And if I would have gotten it wrong, I would have had a message like David showed where it said incorrect, that's wrong, and given you a chance with the review button to go back and check out that slide that gave this information, come back here and get it right. In this case, it's binary, it's 50-50, but some cases they're more than one selection. Let's jump over here to the practice.
Follow the directions to complete this activity and click Submit when complete.
Right? And I'll just not really think about it. Jump over, right? Now, in a lot of cases, what we want you to do is try to remember before giving you a chance to review. This is important because really digging into your memory to remember something is a much better it's a much better way to learn in many cases than simply reviewing at first blush. So we want you to exercise your memory and try to recall what it was. So we're going to ask you to try again first, right? So you go back here and you're going to try again. And let's say we did it different this time. And then we submit, right? Now you have the, oh, you know what? I still got it wrong. Now let's review, right? Okay, I definitely don't know this. I definitely need to review it. Then we come over
An
here,
acceptable conductor crimp is properly compressed
right?
and bell mouth is present at each end of the conductor crimp area. The conductor is flush with the end of the bell mouth. Click the tabs to explore the different defect conditions that can occur with a closed barrel conductor crimp and bell mouth.
So
Remember that closed barrel crimps can be insulated and uninsulated.
it brought us over to the slide that dealt with the topic that we were in to review, and then we can close this and then give this another shot, right? And try again, and we give it another shot. So I'll jump over, there's a summary slide, and then I'll jump over for the sake of time to a time practice. This is another practice that really helps to increase transfer. Transfer is the extent to which any type of learning experience can help a person use what they learn in a real life setting. And this is one of those activities that kind of do that well. Right, so we're applying what we learned about crimp terminations, and we'll identify whether each image shows a defect or acceptable condition for a crimp termination. 10 questions, 6 seconds for each. When you're ready, click start. And so you got a timer up here, and you're looking at this as if you were in the real life setting, and you're telling me, is it a defect? Yeah, that one is. All right. Why is it? Because the support crimp is loose. Continue. Right. Is this one acceptable or a defect? Probably acceptable. Nope. This crimp is a defect. Conductor strands are outside the crimp area, right? Continue, and so on. So this puts it in a kind of, it's kind of a gamification, but also a little time pressure as you might find in a real life setting, right? You don't have all day to determine these things in real life settings either. So we'll go through these real quick. And I'll show you the last bit here. And I'm just going willy-nilly at this point. Okay, I didn't do that great, right? Oh, this is one of the things that the beta is going to catch. So right here, what happened? It didn't give me the correct number. So someone in the beta is going to tell me, or they've already told me, hey, this is not reporting the results correctly. So this should say X number out of 10 correct, whether I got 2 or 3 or 4. So this is something we have to take a look at and make sure that that triggers functioning correctly. And then we have here the ability to review it again and give it another shot or go back to the module menu. Instead, I'm going to jump over to that hands-on exercise part, and you can access this at the very end of the module, or it's also made available. This hands-on exercise on manual crimping is made available, as are all the other hands-on exercises, and sometimes there's more than one per module in the section where it applies, as well as down here at the end. So the student or instructor can choose to do this hands-on activity at the time that they're dealing with that particular subject in the slide, in the sequence of slides, or at the very end when, say, they finish a particular block of learning and now they're going to go out to a different section, a lab, or the plant itself, the factory itself, right? And so they have the materials here and we have the steps, right? And that's another thing that needs to be fixed. See how it's coming up on top? So there's something a little bit not working here, and it could be the fact that I'm presenting this through Zoom, could be an issue here, or it could be an issue with the trigger. But you see what's going on is that you have both the materials and the steps. Okay.
Carlos, can I interject something real quick? Because we
Sure.
had a question come up about
Absolutely.
what level this program was appropriate for. And I just wanted to make sure that for those that are not looking at the chat could hear the answer. This program is really designed for entry level to intermediate operators. We don't assume that the individual has any prior knowledge prior to the actual course itself. But you also have to remember that the module that Carlos is showing you right now is in the optional module section. So it is assumed that before you take any of those, the students have gone through all of the required modules. So they have a base level of knowledge that they have been taught in the program before they do anything like this. So if you really want to think about it, the required modules are more of the fundamental stuff, and the advanced, or rather the optional modules, start to get a little bit more into that intermediate area.
Right. So we might have mentioned that crimping is a process that's done, for example, and these general tools and methodologies are used to accomplish it. But we get into the details of how it's done, and in specific cases with closed open barrel crimps in this particular optional module. Also, that's basically scaffolding, right? Making sure that you know X in order to be able to comprehend Y. And we do that throughout the within modules and from module to module to make sure that people know what they need to know in order to comprehend more complex topics or more detailed information. It's a very important part, and it's one of the ways that we accomplish increasing the learning and retention and reducing the time, because we use a narrator, we use images, we use these different things that I'm showing you, practice activities, and that help us accomplish that trick. So the last thing I'd like to show you here is that each of the slides, we go back to a slide, you can turn on closed captioning here if you'd like. So if we go back to Open Barrel, I'm just gonna click on installation clearance here.
If the terminal does not have an
You can
installation
see,
support crimp,
here the closed captioning is available, right?
the wire insulation can be flush with the conductor crimp area.
And that might be important for people who are not very familiar with English. In many cases, when you're learning a language or you're new to a language, if you're reading it, it's much easier than you're trying to listen to it. So when I was learning French, the words on the page were easier for me to understand based on the way they were teaching me from books than trying to understand a person speaking French at a cafe at his normal pace, right? Very difficult to do. So that can help in those cases. The notes are also available here. So everything that narrator says is in this little box here. That can also help the instructor if they want to kind of get a gist of what's going on in a particular slide, if they're not very familiar with what's there. Also, and the last thing I'll show you is the glossary. Glossary is always available on each slide. And like the terms at the beginning of the module, this gives you access to all the words, all the terms in all of the modules in the course at a glance. So if I just go to, let's go to C, you can see that we have all the terms there, right? For under C for the course. I'll go back here, and then I'll exit here, and I'm going back. So does anyone have any questions or would like to see anything in the main module before I jump out and conclude with the post quiz?
There's a couple of questions here that I can answer very quickly, and it'll give an opportunity to anyone else to post their questions as well while Carlos moves us over to the quiz.
All right, perfect.
So there was a question here about once a training is complete by an employee, is there a means to get the information forwarded to the HR department for training completion? That's a great question. So right now, there's a right now answer and there's a near future answer. The right now answer is that you have the ability, if you have students in the class, to have someone in the class that can actually output all the information into a CSV file for you. In the very near future, so it's in a matter of months, sometime probably towards the middle of this year, we're going to be releasing an updated education portal. And in that portal, the organization members, so people that are either admins for their organization or instructors for their organization, will not only be able to output the reports directly from the portal themselves, even for previous students completion, but we're trying to set it up so that they can actually output the certificates for the students directly themselves as well. Because we know this is something that often comes up for compliance and audits at later dates. So it's something that we're working on with a short-term solution as well as a long-term solution. Somebody was asking if this is available on Edge and if you need to enroll students, if they enroll students the same way as certification. Not precisely. It is available on Edge. This will be available on Edge when it's available for purchase. There's actually two ways that they can be purchased. If you're purchasing it in groups, the best way to actually purchase it is to contact the sales team, because they can often work on providing you a bulk discount depending on what your utilization is going to be. But also it's available on training.ipc.org, which is the training portal that we have available now. In the near future, the all of education, certification, training, everything will be in that one portal. But for the meantime, the education programs are actually purchased separately than CQI. You can still use your CQI funds to purchase the program if you would like to use your CQI funds to do so, but it's done slightly differently than that. They also want to know what the cost is for the program. We have not priced this yet. We're still not there, but I can tell you that I can give you the pricing for the assembly operator program. That program is the member price for one operator is $200, and the non-member price is $275, and that's for the full program, everything included.
And you
Uh,
have access for 90 days for that.
Yes. Chris Roberson asked, is there a goal date for the transfer to the single portal? That's a great question, Chris. It's actually going to be a rolling date because there's going to be multiple launches. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be updating the portal for all of our training programs. And then we're going to have a transition for the certification part, the CQI part, into that portal as well. And that one will be